Today in Flex in the City, we talk to Bhagesh Malde, Global Head of the SS&C GlobeOp, who advocates contrarian thinking with an unbridled enthusiasm for breaking barriers and challenging conventional wisdom with an unwavering belief in the power of diverse teams and diversity of thought. All that happening right now in Flex and the City.
Good afternoon, everybody. This is Rachel Treese for Flex in the City, and I'm absolutely delighted to be with Bhagesh Malde in New York City. Wonderful to see you in New York City, Bhagesh. And Bhagesh is the global head of SS&C GlobeOp. So thank you for joining us on Flex in the City, Bhagesh.
Real pleasure, Rachel, to be here. Thank you.
It's wonderful. And I love that building behind you. Where is that exactly? Where are you sitting? I love it.
Yeah, this is SS&C's main Manhattan office, which is located right adjacent to Bryant Park on 42nd Street. And the building behind me, the very nice building, is the Knickerbocker Hotel.
Fantastic. I used to tap dance to 42nd Street. So that's...
Yeah, we're right on the edge of Times Square here. So yeah, if you turn the wrong way, you won't get very far.
Absolutely. So Bhagesh, tell me a little bit about yourself. You know, you're sat here on 42nd Street. Tell me about your life story and how you came to be sitting there and doing the job you're doing.
Well, I was born in Kenya. Mm-hmm. And my parents are Indian, but they were also born in Kenya as well. Part of the great migration from India to East Africa 100 years ago, when Africa was being colonized, I guess. And, my father was a coffee farmer, so, very, very different kind of area. But unfortunately, he died when I was very young. And my mother and my brother and we moved to London.
Okay.
So
how old were you then, Bhagesh?
I was about 6 years old.
Okay.
So I did all of my education in the UK at school and, high school age, and then went to university at the University of London and started work in the City of London. I read economics at university and didn't really know what I wanted to do, but it sort of just led me towards financial services. I really wanted to be an economist, actually. That was the passion. But the banks beat that out of me after a year or so of trying that. I realized it wasn't much fun. So I switched to an investment banking program and started, sort of traditional start to that side of my career. And then, as we'll probably talk about later on, sort of switched career inside financial services about halfway through my career, which is about 37 years now.
37 years. And so tell me a bit about that sort of start of your career and was there anybody around that was a great mentor or great support in those early years?
Yeah, I think there were plenty, good and bad. And I think you learn just as much from the bad ones as you do from the good ones, because you decide that you don't want to emulate those people and you want to emulate the good ones. So I think having both types of role models was pretty good. I've always been a little bit of a sponge, and I like absorbing a lot of information. It was sort of unnatural to start in the City of London, sort of immigrant kid, very rare in those days for a non-white person to be in the City of London. So it was good. And then one day I realized, I think about five years in, that I was always in the graduate recruitment brochure, because they didn't have many other people to choose to represent ethnic minorities. And so working for a British bank, a true blue blood merchant bank that evolved into an investment bank. And after about 5 years, I wanted to experience something more international. So I actually joined an American bank. Citibank in those days was the most international bank in the world. And I joined them, sort of across the Thames from the north side to the south side. London Bridge was the base for Citi. Sort of started a career there, which led me sort of around the world.
So we had a brief conversation beforehand where you said you lived in around about 20 houses during the course of your career. So tell us a little bit about, what happened after that, London venture and what happened next.
Yeah, I mean, I was pretty in a formal sort of route, right? Investment banking program, analyst, credit analyst and focused on that and enjoying it. I learned about credit risk, spent a lot of time in the credit risk department analyzing proposals for lending, spent part of my career in the FIG group, lending money to financial institutions, particularly insurance companies, and sort of gravitated more to the client side. And it was all sort of going, I guess the plan, right? Whatever the plan was, I was on the conveyor belt, as I put it. And then what happened is a few years in, my wife got pregnant, and we found out we were having twins, and we went from 2 incomes and no kids to 1 income and lots of mouths to feed. And so I sort of got a little bit of a push from behind to sort of like figure out what I was going to do in my career, right? And I was, reasonably okay paid, I guess, but not enough to feed a whole family and pay the mortgage. And so I went to the office after I had a conversation with my wife, and I sort of volunteered for anything that would give me more money. And that at that point, I think the obvious answer then was a sort of expat career. And I looked at opportunities, and the one that was presented to me was to move to the Channel Islands and to sort of run corporate banking business in the Channel Islands, something very different. I didn't even know where the Channel Islands were. They actually sounded far more Caribbean than in the North Atlantic. But I moved to Jersey for 3 years and thoroughly enjoyed it, and got my first taste of sort of offshore banking in that sense. And it was a booming time in Jersey in the 90s.
Wow. So your children were quite small at that point when you were in Jersey. And so what happened?
1 years old.
Wow.
Yeah. So, I think what I learned is probably what my parents and my grandparents learned, is how to adapt in a new environment. And, learned very quickly. In the Channel Islands, we were sort of alone as a family, no family support around us, quite hard at first with two little girls. But I think it teaches you to be adaptable, to make new friends, to live in a new environment. And, when my wife and I got a taste of it, after the first 6 months were horrible, but then we thoroughly enjoyed it. And they gave us a taste for adventure. And so, that was the beginning of several international moves for me as part of my career. And, my wife was always very happy to do that, generally happy, I would say, maybe not every time. And she had her own career as well. But, I think it was a great starting point for my career. And it did really help me later on in my career, the fact that I had very broad experience. I moved from Jersey, I had opportunities in Singapore, South Africa, and the United States. And I took the US opportunity, and I moved to New York, and I've been living in and out of New York for the US for the last 25 years.
Fantastic. So your daughters, you've got 3 daughters, you said.
I do have 3 now, yeah.
Started their careers. What was your advice to them as a father about, their own careers and perhaps being females in the working world?
Yeah, I'm really proud of my daughters, and they're really strong young women. And to be honest, we always tried to not give them too much advice. And we wanted them to know that whatever they wanted to do, they could achieve that if they worked hard enough. And so we didn't drive them into any one particular channel or area. We wanted them to be educated, and they all educated themselves through university, 2 in the UK, 1 in the US. And then they decided themselves what they wanted to do. And we completely left it to them. It's the opposite of the normal Asian parent who strongly typically steers their children into one area or another. And we always thought, hey, it's their life, it's their career. Let them do what they want to do. And that was sort of what I was working hard for, is to give them the ability to do whatever they wanted to do. So they sort of naturally, they drifted into their own areas. And 2 of them actually do work in financial services, one in New York, one in London in private equity. And the third one actually works for the government, and she's a program manager on the technology side for Department of Education. And so, all pretty different. One, I think, in New York is focused on sort of sales and marketing. The other one in private equity is, sort of serious data junkie and analyzes information for a private equity firm in terms of how their investments are doing. Sort of all in different spaces, I would say, to me.
Fantastic. So you were giving a culture of agency at home. And I'm just wondering if that style of leadership as a parent, translates into, how you lead in the workplace as well, Bhagesh.
Yeah, I think it does. Look, I think I automatically, because of my background, did always focus on building diverse teams. And I felt that diversity really helped the quality of the decision you ultimately made if you had a diverse group of people helping you, each with a different background or a different perspective. And that's been part of what I would attribute to my success, is to build those teams. And so, I guess since the late 90s, I've been running global businesses or global teams for different financial services firms. And I think that ability to sort of pull together a global team and have each person's contribution valued is part of my success.
So if you were giving an advice to a young leader who was listening to this podcast, who was thinking, right, I really need to think about diversity, it's really important. What should they be doing? What should they be thinking of as they think about?
Yeah, I definitely avoided getting lost in statistics and trying to measure your own diversity. And I think that leads you quite often to forced decisions, and you could dilute the quality of your team. And so I think the best approach from my perspective anyway was just to be open-minded and to interview and talk to a wide range of people, not have any filters or preconceptions when you first start. I found that, people applied for jobs with me and got further in the interview process than they probably would have with other people who were a little bit blinkered in terms of what they're looking for. People from a certain background or university or race. And I think all I was always interested in, and, diversity was, I guess, a byproduct of me wanting excellence. And I was striving to be the best business, the best team that I could possibly be. And the way I thought of achieving that was to try and hire the best talent in the world. So if you set yourself with that mission, I think it forces you to be very open-minded about the kind of people that you're going to hire or work with. I think it led to a natural diversity in terms of, people from all different backgrounds, men and women. I think that naturally happens if you're looking for the best. So probably not a traditional approach, I would say, but it worked out very well for me.
Yeah, and you were probably a pioneer, so...
At the beginning, definitely, right?
Yeah.
Before it was popular, yeah. But I think that, again, operating it on a global level, I think some of it automatically happened anyway. I think the hardest, you naturally attract people from different races when you're running a global business with people spread out around the world. I think the hardest thing is to ensure that you've got female representation. And again, I think that sometimes I had to push people to do that. They obviously didn't all have the same background as me. I have 3 daughters, so I'm sort of biased that way about giving opportunity. And that's natural when you're a father of three strong women. But I think for other people, sometimes I had to steer them in the right direction. And I do remember once, it was only actually 5-6 years ago, visiting one of my teams in India. And they were a great team, fantastic, high quality hires, but they were all men. And I had to sort of say to them, hey, next time I come back, it's going to be different. And we were a growing business. We were always hiring people. And so I was pleasantly surprised next time I went back. About 40% were women, the senior management table. So they really did listen. And I think, doing that made them happy as well. Nothing worse than a bunch of men on their own. And so they were very pleased about that as well.
Absolutely. So I'm curious, you've worked in all of these different countries, different cultures, different backgrounds. Is there anywhere that you found easier to lead than others, or anywhere you found more difficult to lead? Or
I think actually the first experience leaving the UK, going to the Channel Islands, and there weren't many people that looked like me in the financial services community in Jersey in that time in the 90s. And and I think for the 3 years I was there, anyone I wasn't working with thought I was a doctor. And that stuck out. Obviously, it was quite rare in those days, right, to find a brown face in Jersey. So, but I've always found people welcoming everywhere. I think if you talk to people and treat them with respect, you get the same back from them. They never felt not accepted anywhere. So part of it probably some determination on my side. Whenever you come across that feeling or the perception that someone's ignoring you or doesn't want to deal with you, I think I just push my way through that. And so, not in any kind of aggressive way or anything like that, but just carry on. And over time, I think you win over most people with, some intelligence, but also a lot of hard work. And, one of the things I learned very early on when my father died, I was only 7 years old, so I was pretty young. And, I sort of had to start working to support my family. And so hard work side of financial services was the easy bit for me. So I never had an issue working 50, 60, 70 hours a week that, and certainly as a young person in my first career in banking, that's sort of what I needed to do. So I was always determined to work harder than the next person. And I think that overcame, some obstacles in my path. Definitely there were people who were more intelligent than I was, but I was always prepared to work harder. And I think that helped me through the early part of your career where you're trying to get noticed.
I guess, what do you think the industry needs to do to attract young people to the industry now?
I think it's challenging. Yeah.
It's challenging, isn't it? We had an intern 2 or 3 years ago, and I said, well, he's got a first class honours degree in economics. I said, you need to be looking at financial services. And he was, no way. My daughter, she's 17, she's doing economics, she speaks 4 languages. She's an ideal candidate. How do we attract these young people to the industry?
I think it's definitely much harder now. And I think the rise from the .com era of the technology sector, and parts of that are definitely much sexier than financial services. Working for a Google or an Apple probably is high up on the list of aspiring graduates. And I think financial services finally has a lot of competition that it never had early on. I think if you wanted a good career, maybe a more lucrative career, financial services was one of the few options apart from being a lawyer or something. But I think that's changed now. And I think many kids are attracted by, being entrepreneurs. And I generally actually think that's good for society. And I think for young people to have a very wide range of options, I personally think that, you wouldn't have to do a path like mine to get here. And I think, firms like the one I work for, SS&C Technologies, are very open-minded about where talent comes from. And we're prepared to hire mid-career people from other industries if they bring something different to the table. And I think, the world's changed, and, we're a fintech company, so we're always looking at technology advances. And, I think bringing people in from a technology background or a marketing background in a different business is attractive. We're looking for that talent to come in. In addition to sort of obviously, I run a global fund administration business, which, hires high volumes of chartered accountants and CPAs in the US, around the world. We still need that, but I'm equally hiring software engineers and developers to develop the products that we offer. We're hiring people with skills in intelligent automation. and with, robotic processing experience. So it's different now. I think that you need more than just a pure financial services background. I think that future leaders will have much more than that.
Yeah, I love what you're saying here. What you're really talking about, I think, is you're embracing not just diversity as we know it, but diversity of thinking, diversity of thought, and what that.
I think that's more important, Rachel, right? Than the other ways of measuring diversity. I think you could go to a school in, I grew up in North London. You could go to school in North London, and you'll see very diverse students, but they may all think the same way. Because of the way that they were brought up. And I think it's that point that you mentioned, diversity of experience and diversity of thought, that's key.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think people have to be more open-minded. And I definitely believe that young people are much better at that than people from my generation.
Yeah, absolutely. So you spend a lot of time on a plane, I understand.
Yeah, I do. I circumnavigate.
But your daughters are happy about the air miles, aren't they?
Yeah, my daughters get to spend the air miles. I never get the time myself to spend them, but I do spend. I would say every other week I'm on a plane somewhere, and usually go around the world a few times every year, multiple times. So it's a global business. We have people around the world. I have responsibility for about 7,500 people, and they are spread out in most of the continents. And so it's my job, I think, to go and visit them on a regular basis. I have clients around the world as well, and I'm really important, I think it is, for me to go and see my clients on a regular basis. Even though I've got, senior people around the world, I think that I am the emissary for my business, and, I want them to meet me. So I make it a point to do that. So I think about 10 months of the year I'm traveling always, and I try and have a little break in the summer and a little break at Christmas time. But apart from that, it's nonstop.
Yeah. So what's your top tip for resilience, leadership resilience?
Well, when it comes to travel, I think I rely on melatonin to keep me going in the day. And that's something that you can buy here in the US. It definitely helps you adjust to time zones. Even though I've been doing this for 30 years, traveling extensively, I still find that quite challenging. You're always working on yourself, and I'm trying to focus on getting better quality of sleep, which doesn't always happen, but I'm striving towards it. I think that getting exercise and being outdoors, I think, is really important as well. And then obviously, as you get older, you have to watch what you eat as well. So that's a constant test.
Absolutely. Tell me about it. So when you're not being a great husband, a great dad, and looking after being a great leader in a financial services firm, what is it that you love to do outside of that, Bhagesh?
By the way, I'm still working on the great husband part. But, beyond that, my wife sort of really likes to travel, right? And so when I'm not traveling for work, I'm usually traveling with her for pleasure. And, at first I sort of resist because I don't want to travel when I'm having a break. But, my wife always wins that argument. And so, I think spending time going around the world, and certainly seen lots of the world, but there's still plenty more to explore. I love wine. Although I've just had a 2-week detox to prove to myself that I don't have to drink every day. But, I think the wine, I've visited most of the wine regions in the world, at least the high quality ones, from South America to North America to Europe, including, Spain, Italy, and France, but also New Zealand and Australia as well. So that's been a real fun lifetime, I guess, goal, right? To keep going and to appreciate that more. Fortunate enough to spend a bit of time every year in Cayman Islands. So I sort of learned to scuba, and I'm pursuing advanced qualification there. And I think scuba diving and cycling, which I used to do when I was younger, are two things where you're quite often on your own. And I think it's almost like you're cut off from the outside world, and you have a bit of solitude, both when you're cycling or certainly when you're under the water. You're far from everything else, and it's a good opportunity to to really think, right? And almost contemplate, what you not just what you're doing at the time, but also think about what you want to do. So I think those moments of quiet are really rare these days. Even these days on a plane, I was on a plane for 12 hours last week, and I had Wi-Fi all the way. And so you end up working and you're not really having that break, that ability to think. So I think that's quick. It's getting very rare, the opportunity to have solitude and time to yourself to think. And I think that in the old days, you get on a plane and you would have that time and you could watch a movie, you could just sleep or you could think. But I think it's really rare now that you're cut off from the outside world. And so I think forcing yourself to have that time to think, contemplate is really important. Otherwise, I don't think it comes naturally anymore.
No distractions is so powerful, isn't it?
Yeah.
So I've got to ask this question because otherwise my husband would never forgive me if I don't ask you this question. So I was to buy a bottle of wine now and we were to drink it, what would that wine be?
Okay, well, you're in the country of wine lovers, so and I've actually one of the individuals that taught me so much about wine. Obviously, there's been lots of people, but one of them is one of your Luxembourg countrymen is Alain Gerard. And Alain and I worked together for a number of years, and he was not just great at financial services. Alain was a great wine drinker and also a great philosopher as well. So I learned lots from him. So I would say that tastes change over the years. And usually the last place I visited is my favorite for a while. And so, right now I'm on a high of Tuscan wine, so particularly Brunello di Montalcino. I've always loved Rhone wines from the Rhone region of France, and I think that that combination of grapes is one of my favorites. We eat sort of quite a lot of times spicy food, so I'm looking for wine that pairs with spicy food. So I'm more likely to do an Italian or a Rhone red, like a Chateauneuf or Gigondas. Then I am likely to pick a Cabernet Sauvignon. So definitely more red than white. My favorite white wines are from Burgundy, like everyone else.
Absolutely. So my final question, it's always the famous Flex in the City question. What do you think that financial services could learn for its future from the wine industry?
Oh, wow. Never thought about that. I guess it is what I just said, like really sort of having that me time to sit and contemplate when you're sipping a nice glass of wine and you're into the aromas and the taste, but also it sometimes it takes you back to traveling to that region and you're thinking and all those memories come back when you visited one of those regions that you're tasting wine from. So look, I think that the world has changed and it's never going back to the way it was pre-pandemic. And I think almost what we're trying to do as a firm, we're a flexible employer. And it's one of the reasons why I love working for this company. We are not going to follow the herd. So during the pandemic, we went to hybrid working like everyone else. People work remotely. And as we went back to the office post-pandemic, we kept the hybrid work going. And we whereas most big employers have sort of said, hey, you're going to be back in the office 3, 4, 5 days a week. I don't believe we're going to do that. And I think we're backing ourselves to be contrarians, to have a very flexible approach. We think that resonates with young people. But young people are very focused on work-life balance, more so than I ever was, but I'm converted over to their way of thinking. I do think there's a balance in the middle where I can get the best productivity and the best results in my business, but my people can have some flexibility where they can spend more time with their children, their loved ones. And I think we're prepared to be that flexible employer. even when everyone else is following the herd back. So I think for a young person, they're going to have some clear choices when they're looking at employers beyond salary and beyond grade. And I don't think those things are as important as they were before. I think people are looking for work-life balance, opportunity to succeed in a meritocracy. That's again, maybe that save that for another day, Rachel. I am passionate about breaking down barriers inside organizations. And so, my mission is to unearth opportunity from within my organization and expose it. And I think that's what will help me be a great employer and a retainer of talent in my business. And again, it's really simple. It does come down to capitalism for me. If I have the best talent, I will have the best performing business. So I still have this deep capitalist streak in me, but I think in my search for the best talent, it leads me to be open-minded and flexible.
I absolutely love that. And this is sustainable performance. The words that I'm hearing as we conclude this wonderful interview today, Bhagesh, is I'm hearing contrarian, breaking barriers, adaptable, diverse thinking, and a huge amount of spice. Thank you so much.
Yeah, fantastic. So nice, Rachel. Great.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks for the opportunity. Bye.
You just listened to Flex in the City. Catch us on our next episode.